Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat.
We make these videos to go over some of the information that we get online so that we can help you to make better decisions about how you're going to live your ketogenic lifestyle. What do we have today, Pat?
Uh, in my research, like in my past research, I came across an article about insulin resistance, and I realized that I didn't know much about, like, it's the source of many problems, but I realized I didn't know much about insulin resistance.
Freaking out over here.
So let's do a insulin resistance for dummies.
I'm freaking out over here because Patrick is saying that he doesn't know a lot about insulin resistance. How much do I talk about it? But okay.
Yeah, no. You'll see. First part: insulin resistance increases the risk of. What did you say? I have 3 points, but I'm challenging you.
Oh, it increases the risk of diabetes,
Okay.
heart disease,
A disease.
and I would say psychological, so mental, so brain issues.
Mm-hmm. And being overweight, of course. Like usually,
course.
if you're overweight, like it's a.
But I think that before you even get to the part where you're overweight, your insulin resistance is out of control.
Yeah, totally. So, what are your like signs of insulin resistance, like in your body and your like visible signs? So.
Okay, so they're giving you some symptoms.
Yeah,
or things to look out for.
Signs. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Do you want to go
Do I
in,
wanna
chip in,
guess?
and guess one?
I'm gonna say fatigue first of all,
Mm-hmm.
because what's happening is that your body's ability to manage the sugar is going to be affected by your insulin levels. Because insulin is always on and you're always shuttling sugar away, you're going to have less energy, like just free floating energy to use. So I think fatigue would be one. I do think slight rises in weight is going to be another one. Even before you become obese, you probably will just notice that you're kind of slowly gaining weight.
So if you, for example, for me, it was like, it was that, like I was, after every meal, I was basically crashing. I had like to have a nap after, like my afternoons at work were like infernal. I was like falling asleep immediately. After supper, I had to take a nap. It was like just maybe the after breakfast that I was like, okay, maybe because of coffee, but like, yeah. So look at that sign, like an increase in feeling tired and fatigue, like is a good sign of insulin resistance.
Okay.
Okay. Extreme thirst or hunger, if you're hungry all the time. I think we covered
Well,
that in
you
the
know
past.
what? Okay, I didn't say that, but like, I mean, yeah, it's obvious, right? Because if you're constantly putting away the sugar, so the energy, then your body's looking for the energy. And not to mention that dopamine hit, your body's pushing you to eat because it wants more sugar. Because you're always on this treadmill, right? Of like eating sugar, putting the sugar away, eating sugar, putting the sugar away. And so the dopamine, so that high we get after we eat something sweet, your body wants to stay on that though. So yeah, I could see where that would be, again, another, I don't know if it's a pain point, but
Yeah. So if you're in the pattern of like having a breakfast and needing a snack and having lunch and having a snack and having a supper and needing a snack because you're hungry all the time, that's a good sign that you might like have insulin resistance.
yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's true. Like not being able to make it between one meal to the next.
Yeah.
Chasing food.
So chasing food all the time.
Okay.
Increased or frequent urination. So if you need to go to the bathroom all the time.
Really?
I was surprised
I
too
didn't know
because
about
I
that one.
thought like with your carbs you were retaining water. So like I didn't know that.
But again, I guess it makes sense, right? Because you're eating a bunch of carbs and you will retain some water. You're gonna have also you're gonna have inflammation. But you're gonna retain some water, and then what's gonna happen? Your body's gonna put the carbohydrates away, and what's gonna happen? A bunch of release of water.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does make sense.
Okay. Tingling sensations in hands or feet. Actually, and this one I the first time I
But that probably has to do with neuropathy. You know, like, so one of the things that when you're talking about inflammation now, when you're talking about damage, like I wonder, because the other thing you can have is gout.
Yeah.
So all these all these things where your body is having inflammation, that the nerves can get affected because of like needs to repair. And so again, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not a doctor, but what I do understand is that every time you incur damage to your body, of course you're going to have physical, like sensational repercussions to that. And I've heard about people having tingling sensations. I think probably even in my history I might have had tingling sensations and not really known why my hands get tingly sometimes, or
Okay. Frequent infections. Actually, the first
Yeah.
time I saw it, I was like, oh, really? But yeah, I don't remember the last time I was sick. I have been sick like while on keto, but much less often than before.
But I even
Or
think in that case, when they're saying frequent infections, they're talking even worse than that. They're talking
oh,
about, for example, ladies who might have urinary tract infections,
okay,
or what's the other one called? I can't remember what the other one's called, but like like lady infections.
lady stuff.
And then you also have the infections like where you get a cut and it gets infected.
Hmm.
The reason for that is that if you have a lot of sugar in your body, you're going to be feeding whatever microbes end up getting
Oh,
into your body, right? And they're
true,
allowing them to proliferate.
true, true,
It's
true.
the other reason that also cancer
Okay, that's what I was
is
about to say. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, because I guess that would be the next one, right?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
cancer is another thing that would be fed and grow better in a
Mm.
carby body.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Of course, like there's like the evidence in blood work. What kind of evidence would be like the high blood glucose?
Well, what actually
If
you
you
wouldn't
have
have
a
high blood glucose
no.
right away, right? You have insulin resistance. You won't show high blood
Oh,
glucose until you get to diabetic.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
but what you
True.
would see is that if you do that glucose test and like your numbers, like how quickly you come back down from when you take the glucose solution takes much longer than a typical person. But again, because you're having a big reaction because you're not used to having. So if I have insulin resistance, I'm going to have a poor numbers, but also if I'm doing keto, I'm gonna have poor numbers, which is the
Yeah.
tricky part, right? If you're doing keto, you do need to let your doctors know that you're doing keto if you're gonna do any kind of
Hmm.
diabetic
Yeah.
/ glucose test, because you're not gonna your results are not gonna be the same as everybody
Okay.
else. But I don't know exactly what numbers they were talking about. Can
No,
you
they're
just
not.
share?
So just like in evidence. So we're just like signs of insulin
Okay.
resistance. So evidence in blood works. The other one that actually I did myself because I saw it in another article are like skin tags, skin
Yep.
defects. So if you have skin tags, like usually
That's a
face,
sign of,
neck,
yeah.
I think
They're
armpits.
usually in sweaty parts of your body. So
Yeah,
like like the
armpits.
folds of where your eyes are, and like for ladies it could be under your breast, like in under your armpits, in groin areas. People get them, crack of the
I,
buttocks, those kind of places where you kind of sweat a
Ma-
bit more.
Honestly, I remember having them like around armpits,
Hmm.
but like no, they disappeared. Like since I've been eating better lifestyle, no more skin tags. We have signs. We know like it's bad. You don't want to get there because it leads to a bunch of health complications.
Most of us are already there, though.
So yeah, true.
Most
True.
of us walk around with insulin resistance from a very young age.
Yeah. And I wonder like even our kids will get there even earlier than us in our lives,
Mhm.
maybe. Like with all the junk and all the processed and prepackaged food that like
Well, if you think
there
back to when
is.
you were a kid,
No, it's
right?
true. Yeah.
Like when you think
Probably
back
our
to when you
parents
were a
better.
kid,
Mm.
like did you have as much junk food
Oh yeah.
as your kids? I didn't.
Oh no.
No.
I remember like in my time, like my mom was like packing me. Like in my lunch, I always had like this little package cake, like here that we have in Montreal, like the little May West and stuff. Oh, I had that in every lunch,
No, that was
and it
like
was white bread sandwich, and
well,
with
okay,
like
yes, that we did have, but I'm more talking about like the May West and whatever. I remember my mom would buy like we would do Joe Louis.
yeah, the jewelry, yeah, of course.
So like my
Oh,
mom
we
would
did
buy a
that.
Joe Louis for us, like maybe once a month we would get that
Okay.
as a treat for our like
Oh,
so
okay,
we'd
lucky.
have like I mean there's like I think 8 in a package, so myself and my brother, so 4 days we would have
Yay,
like
yay.
you know. But on the flip side of the coin, I do remember drinking those Bessie drinks, which now I look back as just sugar water.
Ah, okay.
So like we had some junk, but like we didn't
Yeah.
have like usually it was like a sandwich,
Yeah.
some fruit.
Yeah, honestly, like when you count in like the sandwich with white bread and probably crappy meat
Mhm.
and the fruit and the juice and the jajolwi or the May West or the cake, that's a lot of, bad carbs.
I do think for sure that we had like some poor lunches, I would say, like in terms of like what's considered like with what we know today.
Mhm.
But I still feel like in my house, like my mom was much more like you need to have a good lunch, you're supposed to eat properly. But then of course the definition of properly, like
Yeah,
now we
was-
look back on it,
was different.
right? But I could
Mhm.
say like compared to my daughter, who for the longest while before we understood all the
Mm.
stuff, like I had no problem buying her like M&Ms and whatever,
Yeah.
like to put in her lunchbox because they were allowed, whatever. And like now I'm like, okay, yeah, we have to be more like,
Yeah.
you know, and even at that, it's still hard because
Yeah.
what they can travel with,
Yeah.
and like, although my daughter's pretty good, she likes eating food, so
Hmm.
that's easier. But like what she can travel with, you know, it's harder. Like, I think, I don't know for the boys if you have the same issue, but it's like there's only so much they can travel with
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
school.
But at the same time, it's once you know what we know, some changes to their lunchbox was
Kind of goes a long way.
like
Yeah.
a long way, and they were easy to make. Like stop putting juice box in their lunch. Like this is all like already a 40, 30, 40 grams of sugar, and they go with water. Never complain.
Yeah.
Like that was an easy change.
I can't take credit for that one because Kyler stopped having juice in elementary school when the teacher talked to them about drinking more water, and she came home and said, "I'm gonna drink water." And I think from around grade 3, she's been drinking water all the time, so I can't take credit for that one.
Another one we made that was actually, and the more I think about it, like fruits. There's actually
for sure.
almost no more fruits in the house. I have one that likes bananas, so once in a while I'm gonna get bananas, but like I put cheese instead, and like so there's a few switches that you can
That I
make
can say that yeah, us too. Like I mean, I wasn't big on buying fruit to begin with because
my drawer is always full of fruits. in
but
my
but
place, like,
but I was buying
before.
fruit before for Kyler,
Mhm.
and yeah, she's not I
She's
can't
not missing them.
well again, I don't think that it was ever like such a huge deal for her because
Yeah.
but at the same time she would take it if it was there.
And funny enough, like Jake, the last few times I bought apples like to put in his lunch, they came back. He's not even like eating them.
Oh, he didn't eat them?
So that's
Okay.
why I stopped buying them. So okay, so next section, how do you treat insulin resistance? So like there's a section
Decrease
about
the
like,
amount of sugar that you're
course.
eating.
So
I don't know what else they're gonna say, but that's the answer.
yeah. But it's all. I think it all comes to that. So medication, but last resort. Like definitely before getting to medication, you should try to modify your life, to change your lifestyle, and,
Okay,
and
so
you should see.
what I'm going to say, because I'm going to correct that, medication does not treat insulin resistance.
yeah, okay.
Medication hides insulin resistance. When you take a medication, because you're well, basically at that point you're diabetic or diabetic,
It's a blow.
all it's doing is forcing your body to either create insulin or giving you actual insulin. But that's not actually solving the problem.
Yeah.
So I
forces-
disagree with that part
Yeah.
of this article. That's not solving the problem.
But what does that medication
masking.
do? Actually?
It's masking the problem.
but it forces you to store the sugar in cells that actually can't even have like any more.
Right.
So basically,
Which
you're
is
just
what-
overloading your
Yeah.
fat cells, and that's like why you usually on that medication you become even more fat.
Well,
right?
actually, on those medications, so you know what's interesting to me, and I think this is something that I'm saying this as my observation. I'm not a doctor, but what I've noticed is that people start taking medication, so either that glucophage or whatever it is that causes your body to produce more insulin, or they start taking insulin. And one of the things that I notice, if you go back to infections, oh, now they've got infections in their feet and they've got infections in their eye. And it's like, well, yeah, if you're forcing sugar into cells so basically storing more fat where there isn't room for fat, and then you start to have parts of your body that are basically dying, and we don't want to accept and understand that the medication isn't helping us. You know, like it's very rare that you see someone change their diet and they're getting their leg cut off. I've never seen it before. Change your diet usually means that the insulin resistance goes away and you don't have to take any medication and you feel better.
The only thing I might add to that is like the time. Be patient. If you're maybe like we were like at a certain level of insulin resistance, maybe pre-diabetic, or it takes time. Like don't expect changes in 2 weeks. It can take a couple years.
So
Right.
when you say don't expect changes, you mean like,
Like you'll see changes, but like maybe if you're followed by a doctor that like is taking your blood, like your blood work like every week, like how long should we expect to see?
so what's
before
interesting to me, okay,
would see changes.
so what's interesting to me is we go back to those triglycerides and cholesterol and those things, because what I think gets a lot of people at odds with their doctor, when you start eating properly, a keto lifestyle, or carnivore, what happens is that your body is able then to use the fat that you have stored on you. Well, what happens when your body breaks down fat? Well, you have more free-floating fat getting used. And so sometimes when you take blood tests, it's showing that you have excessive amounts of triglycerides. It's showing that you have excessive amounts of cholesterol. It's because, like what you're saying, your body hasn't regulated yet. And so one of the things I find interesting is that if your doctor is concerned, like, yes, you need to be transparent that you've changed the way you're eating. Still, many doctors won't understand. It's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. I know for myself that there was an acceptance that the research shows I'm going to go to the doctor. There's going to be blood work saying you're not okay. But if I would persevere, eventually my blood work would say, Violet's okay. Right? And I think this is the thing is like, if you have confidence in what you're doing, if you feel better, if you're seeing that your weight is regulating, if you're seeing that you have more energy, if you're seeing that, you know, like your skin is improving. And so when you're getting all the evidence from your body to say, yep, this is a better way to be eating, you're going to have more confidence to push forward. Now, where does it become tricky? There's so many people who will do a keto lifestyle for 3 weeks and then they're going to cheat, and then they're going to do keto lifestyle for 2 months and then they're going to cheat, and they're, you know, they're going to, oh, it's Christmas, and they're going to eat something. And when you do that to yourself, what you're really doing is yo-yo dieting. And you're also creating this situation where your body can't actually fully heal because you keep reintroducing the poison. And then when your doctor's doing the tests don't actually end up changing. And so now the doctor has evidence to say to you, well, no, you're wrong, because look, you're not getting any better. So I would encourage people, you know, if you're going to live a ketogenic lifestyle, live the ketogenic lifestyle. Commit. Find entertainment in people and activities, right? Find a hobby. And let your food be what it's supposed to be, to build your body and to fuel your body. You'll do better.
Yeah. Okay, so medication last resort. Then we talked about like carb intake. So monitor
Absolutely.
carb intake, like you say, weigh, just like make sure you're 20 grams or less. Eat veggies, of course, like but like avoid the starchy ones. So we know like salads are the best. Avocado are good because they have a lot of fiber. So do your research. Broccoli, cauliflower are good. Consume fish frequently. So fish, meat, good meat, I guess. And that's one is interesting. Smaller but more frequent meals.
Wrong.
Yeah, they're saying that bigger meals will trigger a higher insulin response compared to a smaller meal will trigger a small insulin response.
Every time you eat a meal, you trigger an insulin response because your body has to put that stuff away. When you have carbs in your meal and large amounts of carbs in your meal, you have the most insulin response. So if I eat smaller but more frequent meals, and let's say I'm doing perfectly, so let's say I'm doing carnivore, and so I'm not eating any carbs, but I'm doing carnivore. If I have 6 meals, just meat, I'm going to have 6 medium responses. If I have 1 meal, just meat, I'm going to have 1 medium response because I've eaten protein and fat. There's no carbohydrates in the meal. So it's like what they're misunderstanding is that there's like, if I eat an ounce of meat versus 3 ounces of meat, I need more insulin. No, it's not about that. It's what did I eat? This is where it goes back to that whole thing of when you eat an artificial sweetener versus a real sweetener. You have to remember that all your body knows is that this foreign body is coming in that it needs to get out. It's going to mobilize itself, right? With the force that it takes for that. When you're talking about fat, protein, and carbohydrate, these are not foreign, but our tongue tells our body that sugar's coming. So what does it do? Well, sugar's toxic. It makes space, right? So you haven't even eaten the full amount and it's already down there making space. It's part of the reason that it's better for us to, rather than have an artificial sweetener, to eat something. So if there's no sugar in it, to let it taste like there's no sugar or there's less sugar. Because when our tongue gets oh, this isn't sweet, it doesn't trigger that reaction. Like, because again, the cephalic response to sugar is to protect us, right? So this is where we're going to go backwards now. If I have 6 meals, but each time my tongue is that's fat and protein, it's going to do an insulin reaction for fat and protein. So, but it's still doing the reaction, right? It's like, put the card down on the table. Oh, put an ace. It's fat and it's fat. Oh, put a 5. It's protein. Ooh, put a king. It's sugar, right? The reaction is there because you've ingested it, right? It doesn't know how much is coming. It's just going to keep reacting to the, it's coming in. So from everything that I've read from the doctors that I've been paying attention to, having multiple meals is absolutely worse for you than having 3 meals, or even better, 2 or 1 meal.
Yeah, that's what
You're having one insulin response, and even if there's carbohydrates in it, it's one large insulin response rather than having 5 large insulin responses, because your body's responding to what's coming in. It doesn't know how much yet, but it knows that sugar's coming, right? You know, if our body knew how to react to strychnine, right? So that's a very poisonous like substance that you have the smallest amount, it kills you. But if our body knew how to react to that to get it out of the system, it would. But guess what? It would be the punch, like the most gigantic reaction, because it's that poisonous. Now, it kills us because there's no way to get around strychnine. The smallest amount will kill you. But you need to think of it like that. Like your body, when it sees toxin, throws the big reaction. Protein and fat are not toxins. It's giving a moderate and a small reaction, right? But it's the same reactions from what I understand.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so when I did Google for insulin resistance, like there's always a little section that are the related questions. So let's do a little Q&A.
Oh gosh.
Quick response. Can you reverse insulin resistance?
Yes.
Yes, by lowering your
Lowering
carb
your
intake.
carbohydrate intake. Okay.
What is the main cause of insulin resistance?
Eating too many carbohydrates.
Of course.
And when I say carbohydrates, I mean all of them, right? Whether you're eating too many bananas or you're eating too many cookies. Yeah. Like when you're eating too much sugar, you're eating too much sugar, too much rice. It can be any of those healthy or unhealthy foods.
Okay. Can you have insulin resistance and normal blood sugar?
Absolutely. Because when you have insulin resistance, it doesn't mean that you're diabetic yet. So you can have insulin resistance, and so your body's struggling to put the sugar away, but it's still able. You know what's amazing about us? We work until we don't work. Right? Like your body's going to be perfect. It's going to do everything it can to keep you as healthy as it can. And by the way, just for everybody to understand, when you have insulin resistance and you're getting fatter, your weight is going up, that's your body working perfectly. It is better for you to be fat than dead.
Yeah.
That's your body working perfectly. So keep that in mind.
Okay. What food to avoid if you are insulin resistant?
I feel it's a permutation of the same question.
Yeah.
I mean, you're avoiding.
Of course,
I really encourage you, because I can't go through a list of every food you should avoid. What I encourage everybody to do, get a tracker, start weighing your food, and you put, for example, mozzarella cheese. I had 3 ounces, and you let it tell you, okay, how many grams of carbs was that? You put salad, let's say romaine lettuce, and you say, I took 200 grams of romaine lettuce. How many carbs was that? And when you start doing that for yourself, what you're going to start to realize is that you start to understand where your carbohydrates are coming from. Half a glass of rice. How many grams of carbs is that? You're going to start to see, like, where are my carbs coming from? And that's the other thing that's kind of cool, is that because when you weigh it, you actually start to understand how much you're actually putting. Let me tell you something. When I look back on the amount of rice that my mom used to put on my plate, like, if that wasn't 5 glasses of rice, it wasn't 1. Right? Like, we don't even know how much sugar we are eating at a sitting.
It's the same goes for pasta and breakfast cereal. If you look, like, one serving of 85 grams of pasta, that's like small, and it's already like, I think, like last time I checked, it was like 60-70 grams of carbs, like just like regular penny. Or so same thing goes for a bowl of cereal. If you look one serving, I think it's 3/4 cup 3/4 of a cup of cereal. That's not like, at least my boys, I know they have at least that 5 or 6 times that amount, like in one breakfast sitting. So what food to avoid? Like all the cereals, all the
Again,
sugary stuff.
we could
Uh,
list forever here. You need to
yeah,
get a tracker,
yeah, yeah.
and you need to start tracking your stuff. And if you're
Mm.
willing to eat a 16th of a cup of cereal with, however much milk you can possibly put in there to stay under your numbers, I mean, do it.
Yeah,
But I think that that'd be much less satisfying than eating a nice big bowl of
yeah.
vegetables,
Hmm.
right? So, but that's my choice. I would rather eat the nice big bowl of vegetables that are low glycemic than to eat a teeny tiny portion of, Frosted Flakes.
Yeah. Easy one. Are bananas good for insulin resistance?
Absolutely not.
No.
Bananas are actually one of the highest carb fruits that you can eat. So, no.
Yeah. Is there a difference between diabetes and insulin resistance?
So yes, you're insulin resistant until you become diabetic. So, and what that means for me is that, so basically diabetes is an extreme form of insulin resistance, but when you look at it from a very definitional point of view, when you eat food and your body can no longer manage the food you're eating, so the sugar that you're intaking, that's when you're diabetic. And what that means is that when you're eating the food, your body can't put that sugar away, and so if it stayed in your blood, of course you would die. So they have to give you medication, or you need to stop eating sugar.
Yeah. Like, what does it mean when your body is insulin resistant? It means like you've just gone too far, I think. No? Like you just pushed your body to a point where it's not functioning properly if you become insulin resistant.
But my problem with that is that that's every person on the planet almost. I mean, most children are insulin resistant. We just don't test them for it.
Yeah.
But so like, I mean, is it that we pushed our body too far? Yes. But at the same time, like, wow, like what does it mean? It means that you're on the road to poor health.
To poor health, yeah.
Right? And it's sad when you think about it, right? How many kids do we have on the road to poor health? How many adults? I mean,
Yeah. That was insulin resistance for dummies.
is that what it was called? Insulin
No,
resistance
no,
for
it's,
dummies?
it's my own like pat chat title.
So this article, I think, kind of puts us back to basics. There's a lot of questions on there that I answered at the very beginning when I was on my investigation of whether taking sugar out of my life was really the answer for me. And I feel like this kind of put me back at thinking about that again. Like, is that really the answer? And what would I do? And da, da, da. So that's good. And I think that like what's not scary, but like I think the thing that it makes us wonder about is whether or not we're taking enough care. Even today, like, I know that I still like verify how much of what I'm eating, like every once in a while, just to be sure that I'm not overindulging. But how many people do that, right? Like, I encourage everybody at least once every other month to start tracking again, even if it's just for a week, to make sure that, your hand isn't getting heavy while you're sharing your food, right? Like, just to make sure that you're eating the amount you think you're eating. Because sometimes it gets really easy to think that you've got, I just have 50 grams there. Especially with nuts. Nuts are delicious, and like it can really be. Yeah, we can go overboard with nuts. I've taken breaks from nuts because you can go overboard.
Honestly, last time I did, like when we went ski last weekend, I did prepare 2 little containers of nuts.
Oh,
That's what like you didn't see. No, you didn't have them.
I didn't have
but
any.
like just a little amount was actually 3 servings. I know.
Carbs.
Oh, I don't know. No, carbs was like not bad. Maybe net carbs was 6 or 8, maybe three servings. But like point is I could have like had probably twice of that small amount.
But
so,
can I just point out that 6 or 8 grams of carbs for me is bad?
Yeah, you see, yeah.
Because it's like almost half my day.
Your day, yeah.
Well, considering that most times I eat 15 grams of carbs in a day, it is half my day actually.
Yeah.
Ish.
So careful with nuts.
But nuts are delicious, and but you need to be careful with them.
Cheese like is less carby, but like it can also be.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting too is that I think sometimes we get caught up in eating, again, the fun nuts over eating the healthier nuts. Because like if you eat pecans and walnuts, I wonder like how much you would be able to eat versus eating the cashews and the almonds. And almonds I've tried to. Actually, I've avoided almonds altogether lately just because of all the oxalates in them. But like the cashews, like I'm starting to be like more like, okay, yeah, you know what, even if I would buy nuts, I think I would try to buy nuts that don't have cashews in them, because which is funny because go back in history, I didn't used to like cashews, get into a keto lifestyle. I started liking cashews. Now I'm back to like not wanting to eat cashews again. But this is the, as you learn things, you modify things.
Yeah.
But that's what's kind of cool about educating yourself about food, right? And this is where I come back to, they always say that there's no flexibility in keto. Like, how many different things have I added, taken away, moved, shifted? Like if you think about it, like, I probably have more flexibility and variety in what I'm eating now than when I was doing standard American diet, right?
So,
Pizza, hamburgers, rice, chicken. That was pretty much like what I ate most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like I have so much more variety now. It makes me laugh when they say there's no variety. Olives. I love olives. Can't get enough olives. I've even started to like artichoke hearts. Right? Who would have thunk it? I want to thank everybody for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet Pat Chat Edition. I love when my wellness warriors stop by, and everybody who is new, consider subscribing because we make these videos every week. If you'd like to contribute to the production of videos, Patreon, Amazon, links in the description so that you can help us out, make more videos. It's our goal to help you guys improve your health, both mental and physical, so that you can live a happier life. So I can't wait to talk to you guys again next week.
I'll see you next week.